great in earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart is only evil continually. Genesis 6:5. Humanity is moving through a period of increasingly deteriorating moral behavior. Today, wickedness among Earth's inhabitants has grown to a fever pitch. When we study our Bibles, what becomes evident is the fact that between the antediluvian world, that's before the flood, in Noah's time, known as the days of Noah, and our present world, there is a shocking similarity unfolding before us. Jesus said it would be as it was in the days of Noah, right? The news of late has been replete with unimaginable stories of brutality. Most people are mystified, even horrified, at the extremity and the frequency of the cold-hearted and brutal acts of senseless aggression perpetrated mostly on the aged in various sections around America. What is it that we are witnessing? This seemingly new form of insanity invading America is actually a worldwide phenomenon, and it is burgeoning. A new breed of criminal has emerged on the scene. Younger, stronger, completely lacking remorse. Oh, and cold-hearted would be a gross understatement. Nothing witnessed by generations upon generations can prepare humanity for this emerging wickedness. They are many, their numbers are growing, and they all seem to have one thing in common. They lack any semblance of a human soul. Their purpose seems to be that of mayhem, confusion, and to inflict as much pain as possible, even to the point of death of the victim. They're being manipulated to perform like robots and to attack like well-trained attack dogs. Their trainer, who we should all recognize as a manipulator, yet he's Satan and he has only wickedness in mind. Who are they? Where have they come from? Are these marauding bands of seemingly soulless bodies even human? Has there been some tampering going on with the DNA of a segment of earthlings, creating beings void of human emotion? What would need to be done to a person to negate the traits that provide us with feeling love, kindness, and even remorse? Is it possible to change the genome through DNA manipulation to void a person's soul? The manipulation of human and animal DNA being performed in medical labs today is astounding. Most of society today hasn't a clue about what's being created in these labs. Genetic engineering is in well advanced stages in what can now be seen as man taking over for God. Man has now become the manipulator, creator of new forms of life. But thou, O Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book, even to the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased. Daniel 12:4. Can there be any doubt in the minds of those who take God's word seriously that knowledge has increased exponentially and that we are now at the end? On the horizon are DNA microchips able to analyze more than 1,000 traits at once. Those linked not just to a child's health, but to enhancements. Genes that influence height, intelligence, hair, skin, and eye color, and athletic ability. Source, the Globe and Mail. I am getting to a point here with all these questions. I believe the Bible has the answer. We're informed by Jesus Christ himself in Matthew 24 that there would be some distinguishing factors associated with the last days on planet Earth that would set those particular days significantly apart from all other periods of time in human history, except or save one. Jesus tells us what time period in man's past best fits as a comparison of what will be witnessed in the last days just prior to his return. He was enlightening us with attempting to elevate our sense of perception at the same time. Jesus is telling us what's coming, and he's not being elusive. Jesus' warning had to allude to something completely different than what humanity would consider normal. But as the days of Noah were, so shall the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days that were before the flood, they were eating, drinking, marrying, and giving in marriage until the day that Noah entered into the ark. Matthew 24, 37 to 38. Obviously, those of Noah's day were eating and drinking to sustain themselves, although we are not told what they were eating and drinking. Some in-depth study I've done shows a corruption even in their diet. But my question here is, why would Jesus speak of marriage or giving in marriage during those days? To this casual reader, marrying and giving in marriage is seen here as simply going about business as usual. They see nothing out of the ordinary about this verse. But to the student reader, what Jesus is alluding to is that just prior to his return to earth, the world will be experiencing an all-consuming evil corruption of the genes of humans through the cohabitation of fallen angels and human women, just like the people of Noah's day. Wedding dresses, to Noah's day, which was the reason God destroyed the antediluvians with a worldwide flood. Think about it this way. Who in their right mind will be thinking about their white wedding dress or their black tuxedo at a time when the world will be crumbling around them? The world just prior to his return will be filled with the violence, wickedness, and mayhem that Noah witnessed in his day. Jesus laid out precisely for his disciples the full picture of those last days. Jesus wasn't referring to normal marriage plans, but to very abnormal and abominable copulations between distinct groups of beings. If we misinterpret the verses of Genesis 6, most of the rest of the Bible will never make sense. Keep in mind that Jesus was referring to similarities between the antediluvian era and the last days before his return. Remember, the reason Jesus sent the deluge was because of all the abominable unions, marriages, between fallen angels and human women, and the progeny these unions brought forth. Evil was spread over the antediluvian world exactly the way it's overtaking ours today. Jesus referred to marriage in those days before the flood because that's exactly what we read in the Genesis 6 account. That the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose. Jesus isn't being coy. He's laying out the future, one that involves the worst possible scenario, the re-incursion of fallen angels into our space-time continuum for one purpose: the corruption, destruction of the human race, just as they did in the days of Noah. And whereas thou sawest iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men. Daniel 2:43. Daniel is revealing a message given in a dream to King Nebuchadnezzar by God. But we see something very strange in this verse. They shall mingle themselves with the seed of men. Again, for the casual reader, there is nothing out of the ordinary in this verse. But for those of us who study prophecy with a desire to fully understand what God has in store for his creation, there's something in that verse that should give us reason to pause and delve deeper. Who are they? Whoever they are mingling themselves with the seed or offspring of men, daughters. This is a prophecy of the last days. There was a corruption of the genome in Noah's day perpetrated by fallen angels. We're told by God himself that there will be a resurgence of this same corruption in the days just prior to Christ's return. Here in Daniel chapter 2, we're given confirmation that in the last days, they, fallen angels, will again procreate and human women to produce offspring, hybrid, Nephilim. The question is, are these hybrids already dwelling among us? Remember, we're going to judge angels. Okay. The birth pangs that Jesus refers to in his Olivet Discourse lesson are upon us. Only the foolish will deny it. All these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. Matthew 24:6. Jesus is about to call his disciples' attention to numerous birth pangs which will begin just a few years before his return. It is significant that the verse above mentions that all these things must come to pass. Everything Jesus says, lays out will happen. Some of them are happening now. Jesus continues describing just what these things entail. Although Jesus is speaking to the nation of Israel of those folks who will still be alive at the end of the Great Tribulation, just prior to his return. I believe the birth pangs he speaks about are a warning sign for all who will believe and trust him. In the next verse, you will see why I believe the birth pangs have begun. And because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. Matthew 24:12. If I were to restate his verse so that the meaning would be even clearer than how it's written above, I would state it thusly, or this way. When lawlessness thrives and is coupled with extreme wickedness, and as the scenario becomes more and more pervasive on the world scene, then what humanity has enjoyed in the past in regards to kindness, affection, benevolence, charity, and brotherly love will be non-existent. Then the new breed of human, the hybrid, filled with hate, malice, wickedness, and cruelty takes over. Please understand that these are my words. I'm not attempting to put my words in the Bible, only to provide a more clear understanding. If we look into the original Greek words, my explanation above would be pretty close to what Jesus was telling his disciples. The period of time Jesus refers to will be extremely frightening, and there is every indication that that period of time has arrived. The closer we get to the time of Christ's return, the more improbable will be the sights that we see and even sounds that we hear. Improbable in that they will consist of what we've always been taught as being that of the realm of myth, that is supernatural. My wife and I heard a sound the other day that was completely abnormal. It was a noise that seemed to come out of nowhere and grew louder and louder. similar to an approaching train. We had walked down the rural road we lived on to our mailbox, about 1/8 of a mile. As we were just about to the mailbox, the sound started. There was a slight breeze, but not enough of a wind that would create a loud howling noise. No planes in the air above us, and no approaching automobiles on the main road. We were perplexed, to say the least. Why? What was it? I have no idea. It simply stopped. But the dimension of the malevolent supernatural is invading our world, and they are becoming more and more brazen with their antics, allowing many people to see things they don't want to see, to hear things no human can explain. UFOs, let me just go on that. UFOs are reported every 10 minutes somewhere on planet Earth. That's a lot of sightings by many people from every walk of life. The beings that operate these craft are at times allowing themselves to be seen, and for the most part they are described as creatures with no resemblance to human beings. The investigative data that I've studied points to these beings as interdimensional, not extraterrestrial. They're not traveling from distant galaxies to interact benevolently with Earthlings. They are appearing and disappearing as though popping in and out of other dimensions. Why are they coming? I believe it is to create an atmosphere of fear and confusion. The beings that traverse dimensions can be benevolent or malevolent, and we should be keenly aware of the current incursion by many malevolent beings in these last days. But as the days of Noah were, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. I believe Satan's goal is to build an army that he can fully control, thus command to fight at the last war, which the Bible refers to as Armageddon. He's just not content with readying the horde for battle with the Lord. But while the Lord tarries, Satan will be focused on inflicting a world of hurt on humanity in ways we would never have conceived, all to create an atmosphere of fear and confusion. He's done it before, and he's prophesied to do it again in the last days. The stories of these marauding bands of soulless misfits exploding on the scene today are from various news releases I've read over the past few months. I'm sure most of you have been privy to these same articles, but perhaps had not connected the dots. There's your expression, Dottie. I mentioned birth pangs earlier, and I was alluding to a gradual but burgeoning set of conditions. As the birth pangs, Jesus speaks of run the gamut from minute to extreme. The church can be seen at the beginning of those birth pangs, but as they become more and more severe, without warning, in the twinkling of an eye, the church disappears, and the only people remaining to experience all the mayhem and misery created by these fallen angels and their soulless hybrids are the Christ rejectors. If you've never said to Jesus Christ and you remain in the state of mind, then those extremely harsh birth pangs are going to be yours to experience. I've done my own research and am convinced humanity is in its last stage. I would hope that everyone who reads this commentary will be motivated to explore the plethora of research data on the subject of post-human world, the world of the genetically modified human. God would not allow this corruption of his creation to go much further. As I have stated, the research has progressed to the stage that scientists are convinced that it's time to alter the genome of humans. We are in the last days, and Jesus is on his way. Jesus says, except the time be shortened, there'll be no flesh saved. None. So, that's awful. That's, you know, it's really something. He quoted from Daniel, and Daniel, you remember what happened to Nebuchadnezzar? Where he was sent out into the field to live like an animal.
Yeah, for 7 years, right?
Yeah, and the nails growing and eating grass and so forth. But it also mentions, who was behind this. There are a group called the Watchers, which again, expression, Book of Eden. The Watchers. Different class of angels. And these angels were permitted by God to come against Nebuchadnezzar and alter his physical state of mind and body. And then they were rebuked by God, and he returned to the state of mind and body of a human being. So, you know, these little spots, hits and things. You know, our Lord saying, it shall be as it was in the days of Noah. And we go back, and like we said, you can look at it and say, okay, the danger of those days of the people, along with what Jesus meant, was their preoccupation. Well, no, in the days of Noah, giants, abnormal things were being produced and reproduced, and violence was everywhere. You know?
I was just on 2020 last night. I was thinking about it. There was a segment about people who are, I guess women in particular, who are desperate to have children. They can't have children, and now there's a what's it called? Free something. I guess if women have just, I guess, spent all their money, thousands of dollars, with fertility drugs and treatments that don't work, so they're finding free sperm donors. There's actually banks of men who are giving their sperm away for free, and they were talking about how they meet. You can meet someone, and you can interview them, and you basically just go meet up and exchange. And I just think about the desperation of people willing to do, you know, what they're willing to do to have children.
Yes.
And, you know, it's not, I thought about it, because I don't know, if you think of the traditional sperm bank, well, you know, that, what lies behind that? Well, you know, at least they get paid, so like, okay, well, it's a way to make money. So the question that they were asking the men is like, well, why are you giving away your sperm for free? And, you know, I'm just thinking about, like, hey, well, this is some, you know, fallen angel embody some guy. That's a free way to do it. You know, people, right? And so the FDA told one guy who was giving away a lot of sperm, and maybe he has like 10 or 14 children outside of these, something like, you know, they're basically telling him to stop. But I was thinking like, well, it's not really illegal, you know, so it's like, do they want him to stop just because, or they, you know, he's passing, right? Well, for them, like, of course, he's bypassing a lot of money, so they're not making any money off of this exchange. But one of the doctors was saying, you know, well, at least in the traditional sperm bank, because a lot of people say, well, yeah, I am getting the STD, you know, all the testing, so I'm fine. But he said that they're, you know, even bypassing the psychiatric evaluations and things like that, so you don't really know what's these people's motives, you know, behind this. And a lot of people don't care, you know, they'd rather just have a child. So this already shows that, you know, women, you know, any woman will do whatever it takes to have a child, so they're not going to screen, you know, really care if it's, you know, this hybrid child.
When they grow up to be monsters.
Yeah.
And they'll,
That's
you
how-
know what I mean? You don't know. I mean, you know,
It creates
right off and says the good side of sin. The side of sin is the good side.
Most dangerous part.
Most dangerous part. You know what I mean? And you and I, you know, and you working at a place where medicine is involved, and we all know that medicine is not absolute, and you don't know the ramifications from it until, like a pill. The new things that they come out with, you don't know the ramifications of that. FDA, nobody else knows at least 10 years after you absorb this. And who knows the way that they're doing things now, they could be creating some monsters you don't know, because these things are distorting minds, it's deteriorating your body, and you don't know it for 10 years, and it's too late after that. You know what I mean? And then you've had relationships with people, and your sperm's going someplace else, and this is an ongoing thing. So, I mean, like, it is just really something to really think about, you know?
And you think about even the motive behind it, because when they're choosing these sperm donors, they're, most of them say they're introverted, they're either, computer
Yes.
science, genius, or whatever, so they already have intellectualism as a height of what, what they believe in, what they stand for, and
Exactly.
even that in and of itself.
And that thing about the
philosophy
hybrids,
behind it.
you know, they want to choose somebody with
that's
a
their
very
job.
high IQ and so
Yeah.
forth, you know what I mean?
So, you think you're doing something good, but well, at least I had this smart child, but,
Mhm.
realize what's behind what you're doing, like.
And what was that devil
Science
child's
knowledge
name
there.
that was real popular? And even his father, and he was like a Damien, yeah, you don't know if you're creating one of those, you really don't,
And there's no screen and no caution for it, that's why it's scary, because, it was throwing caution to the wind by, for their desires. Like, what I want, I'll do whatever it takes to get it, so.
What is that saying, Ron, the Lord used, it's not the genius of the wise, it's not about the foolish of
The wisdom of
the
God
wisdom of
confound.
the wise.
The foolishness of God confounding the wisdom of the wise.
Right. I often think of that, when a man thinks they're so brilliant at creating something, you know what I mean? Not.
Remember the first incursion, not the first, but the major turning point for our generation was Hitler, Mein Kampf,
Exactly.
okay? And then it got stopped,
Mm-hmm.
but remembering these things are supernatural. So you can stop the human agent, but you can't stop the demonic advance.
That's right.
Who's going to find other human agents?
Mhm.
And this is definitely a worldwide thing that is going on, and man is gradually falling for it more and more and more as conditions cause him to even long for it more. The deception is great.
It is.
What he just said, when talking about this, the soulless person.
Yeah.
That's committing all these crimes.
Yeah.
Just don't care and all this stuff. So, yeah, I'm gonna create a master race to combat that foolishness.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And even when you think about Hitler, and that a lot of what was going on behind the scenes of that was medical testing. They
It
were
was.
doing
Exactly.
all
It was.
sorts of
He had the
crazy
greatest minds in the world working
Yeah.
for him. You know what I'm saying?
Advanced
And he was totally, people thought he was insane, but who knows what Hitler was, you know what I mean? Because Hitler was different. He was definitely different.
When I was, when I was born, my mother had written my name next to this chapter, 2 Timothy chapter 3. Later, as the Lord began to work in my life and bring me back to my senses, I asked my mom, because I didn't own the Bible, so I asked her, could I read the Bible that she had? Oh, gladly! And the first thing I want you to read is 2 Timothy 3, because the day you were born is the day that I'll put your name next to that passage. And I've been a student and lover of studying prophecy all along. I mean, not personally, but I found out this was a bit in me that part of the calling, the birth and the calling. So this know also that in the last days perilous, that's violently dangerous times shall come. Starting with, men shall be lovers of their own selves, covetous, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, without natural affection, truth breakers, false accusers, incontinent, fierce, despisers of those that are good, traitors, heady, high-minded, lovers of pleasures more than lovers of God, having a form of godliness, but denying the power thereof, from such turn away. And he goes on, for of this sort they which creep in the houses and lead captive silly women, taken with sins, led with divers lusts. Men, and then the movement toward the women. Ever learning and never able to come to the knowledge of truth. Now as Jannes and Jambres withstood Moses. Jannes and Jambres. It's in here. So the people that read that expression knew exactly what he was talking about. Demonic opposition through human agents. These men who had sticks in their hands that all of a sudden turned into dangerous, poisonous serpents who were gonna kill Moses for coming into Pharaoh's court with what they deemed to be mess. God says, no, I come in here with greatness. And so that serpent swallowed up those two serpents. You won't get these sticks back no more. Except the Lord shortens the time. So where the sin does abound, grace does much more abound. But that grace is for those who believe. The gospel's going forth with an intensity as never before, and yet at the same time there's this false gospel going forth with intensity as never before. Boy, this is some heavy drama we're in right now.
It is, it really is.
Heavy drama.
And you know what, it's so enlightening, like today, like I didn't know.
Yeah.
That strange flesh. Because see, when I was coming up, they called that something else. So, you know, I didn't interpret that way. I've heard of it before, and I know, you know, stories that I've read and when I was growing up too.
I didn't know what I was doing.
What was he doing?
Yeah, these updates are sitting there.
Oh.
So they want to run when you're
Right.
going to turn it off, and so before they shut it down, it's running. So I just close it. And then they go to sleep mode.
Prepare to hibernate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's messing with
But then when you open it back up, here we are again.
Yeah.
You just gotta let it go.
Yeah, you can't avert me. So the scripture talks about in the last days they won't endure sound doctrine, but give heed to seducing spirits and doctrines of demons.
Gotta stay in that word.
Yeah.
That was definitely here. Glad we were in it too. This was real good. I really enjoyed it. I learned a lot, and it's really connecting, like I always say, connecting the dots for me. Because like, you know, if they say every 7 years your body changes and things change, and I feel like at this particular point, since I haven't really reached, you know, my age, I'm thinking to myself, I've been noticing some different things going on. And I was wondering, is it because I'm getting older, or is it because, I don't wanna say I'm getting wiser, because I'm not, but I'm thinking that maybe the Lord is giving me a little bit more information now to feed on.
I just maybe just realize that I'm coming to a point in my life where I'm really trying to, I don't even know how to describe it, I guess I'm still in the middle of it, but just trying to figure out, you know, what I'm doing as far as, I don't know, the steps that I'm taking and you know, as far as career, moving on in my life.
What you like?
Yeah, and, you know, I think I shared with you about, you know, medicine